So first I'm going to read a few things here. First, this is a passage from the second page of Richard Bach's Jonathan Livingston Seagull, a novel about seagulls. He writes, "Most gulls don't bother to learn more than the simplest facts of flight, how to get from shore to food and back again. For most gulls, it is not flying that matters, but eating. For this gull, though, it was not eating that mattered, but flight. More than anything else, Jonathan Livingston Seagull loved to fly." And this is relevant because last night on Stickam I was having a discussion with someone about biology and about teleology, and I was arguing that life not only wants to survive, it wants to enjoy survival. And this other person was basically a neo-Darwinist and espousing the selfish gene theory, though I think it's more it's very metaphysical in nature, and so is Darwin's theory, because all biology is metaphysical in nature. Because I was arguing at least that we can't do without teleology if we want to understand either individual life, ontology, or species life and evolution, or phylogeny, ontogeny is what I like to say. So teleology then is expressed by this enjoyment that life has for existence, of existence. Life is based on desire. That's the basic motivation, desire for self and for other. The person I was arguing with was saying that no, the motivation for life is survival, just mere survival. Survival of the fittest, and that there's this mechanical selection process that takes place. Though, of course, to even use selection again, we're necessarily employing teleology. Even if it's, we could say, oh, well, it's a metaphor. Natural selection, selfish genes, it's merely said in a metaphorical way, but for the theory itself to do, scientific work, for it to explain something, the metaphor has to be taken literally. You're saying that the mechanical process is selfish, that it's interested in itself. So you can't avoid teleology, as I said. But my response to him was to say that no, survival isn't the basic motivation for life, because life, living, the process of being alive, is synonymous with survival. So in the course of evolution, survival just sort of happens. It's not the reason for evolution or life. The reason is that life enjoys being alive. It enjoys survival. Life and survival are just equivalent. So survival happens, and because organisms enjoy their experience, and by enjoying it, discover more and more enjoyable ways of experiencing it, because they desire to increase not only their experience of themselves, so an internal nervous system develops, but also their experience of the outer world, which is obviously facilitated by the inner development of the nervous system. It's almost as though, in a desire to see, the body inwardly forms itself a pair of eyes. They developed along separate evolutionary streams at least 40 times eyes did. So there's obviously, life seems to have this inherent desire to see. It wants to reach out, and to do so it must reach in. It must inwardly complexify. And obviously this is a metaphysical reinterpretation of the biological world and the material world, because I would argue also that matter possesses some form of enjoyment of its own existence. It's obviously not very complex, and it doesn't reach out very far to experience a very complex, outer world. It doesn't have senses. We could say that what atoms experience is, gravity, and electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. But what is it like to experience gravity? Well, it's made me think of it like being on a slide forever, and I'm just sort of, that's the best I can do in terms of trying to describe how an atom feels. But it seems to have to feel in order for cosmic evolution to have taken place, for energy and light and electricity to have become protons, neutrons, and for protons and neutrons to have bound themselves together and found electrons to share atomic organization with. And then if those atoms hadn't, because of gravity, coalesced into these coalesced into stars, which then exploded and eventually produced solar systems with planets, and planets produced life. Matter all along this process is complexifying, right? And I think complexity is the result of a desire to intensify experience present in the matter itself, and the forces that are acting upon it, because there's not really a separation between these, nor between time and space. So let me read something else by the ecologist, cosmologist, religious scholar Thomas Berry. He says, "The universe must be experienced as the great self. Each is fulfilled in the other. The great self is fulfilled in the individual self. The individual self is fulfilled in the great self. Alienation is overcome as soon as we experience this surge of energy from the source that has brought the universe through the centuries. New fields of energy become available to support the human venture. These new energies find expression and support in celebration. For in the end, the universe can only be explained in terms of celebration. It is all an exuberant expression of existence itself." So this is a metaphysics of celebration, which I think naturally follows from the idea of an experiential, evolving universe that enjoys its own existence. The end result of that is a cosmic celebration. And this seems to contradict pretty drastically with the current economic, cultural system that we are currently dominated by, because we value work, productivity, money, which is a very abstract, ephemeral thing. We basically use money as if it were magic, as if it possessed some intrinsic value independent of the world around it. As we're finding out, it doesn't. Money is an agreement that we share amongst one another. It's based on trust in ourselves, in one another. Maybe God, if you want to look at it that way, but also it's based on an agreement between people about how they ought to interact with one another and exchange goods and services. We need to play more than work. I think that would be the first part of the shift.